Hello again, Space Cadets. This is Commander Ryan. I am here to teach you about how to defend the F-pawn and make sure that it doesn't become a problem. There are 4 ideas for defending the F-pawn that are really easy to understand and do. The first one is castling your king. The second one is overprotecting the F-pawn, like protecting it with more than you need to. The third is to attack the squares your opponent's pieces need in order to attack the F-pawn. And the last one is to castle queenside and not worry about the F-pawn at all. So let's look at a few examples of each of those. So here we go. We're going to castle kingside in this game to defend our F-pawn. So here we go. So right here, we've got a fried liver style attack where we are doubling up our attack, or white is doubling up their attacking resources on F7 and black castles. And you'll see that that puts 2 pieces defending the F-pawn. A lot of times the F-pawn becomes a problem when only the king defends it. But here we have 2. Now, a lot of people don't like this situation right here, where you give up a rook and a pawn for a knight and a bishop. Well, that is, a rook and a pawn is 6 points, because that's 5 plus 1. And a knight and a bishop is 6 points, because that's 3 plus 3. So, in this situation, most players in the world who really know what they're doing would generally prefer black's position because they have an extra piece. Even though both sides have given up 6 points, you can count the pieces. Look, you've got a rook versus a rook, a knight versus a knight, a dark square bishop versus a dark square bishop, a queen versus a queen, and then you have a rook versus a knight and a bishop. So that's 2 pieces versus 1, which is really good. White does have 1 extra pawn, but that pawn will only matter if the game goes a long time and the pawn starts marching down the board and becomes a queen. So for now, the extra pawn isn't really a big deal. So this is a great position for black because they defended their F-pawn and they won 2 pieces for a rook and a pawn. Here's an example of overprotecting pawn, making sure that it is super, super safe. So here we go. So this bishop recaptures and targets the F-pawn. Right now, that's okay, because if you were to take there, that would be a problem, because the king would just take back and black would be losing material. So you don't want that to happen. So we continue the game. And now we have 2 pieces threatening there. We only have 1 defending. So we bring our queen. And as you can see, there are 2 blue arrows and 2 green arrows to show that if black were to take here, black would lose a queen and a bishop for a pawn and a queen. That means white has basically an extra bishop down here, which is very good for white. However, that didn't happen. Instead, they played knight c6, and then we have this knight h3 move. Normally, a knight to the edge of the board would be a terrible move, but in this situation, it's helping defend the F-pawn again, or a 3rd time. So here's what happens. The black knight gets a fork on the queen and bishop, so the queen has to go defend the bishop. So we take like that, and you'll notice the queen is no longer defending f2, but the knight is. So therefore, they still cannot take, because if they did, we would just win a knight for a pawn. I'm sorry, we would win a bishop for a pawn. And if they continued, then we would have a queen for a knight, and now white is really winning. So I don't think that would happen, though. So again, here's what happened. They're going to continue to try to attack this pawn. So first they're attacking our queen. So we take, and then our queen retreats here, defending the f-pawn, and checking the king at the same time. So the knight goes there, we do this, and now that we've castled, you should recognize the king and the rook defending with the queen. And you'll see black really never has a chance to take this because white just keeps defending that pawn. Also, developing and castling and making sure their pieces are safe while defending the pawn. So here we go. The knight goes here. This is a really excellent move. Not only does it defend the pawn from over here, but it also threatens to capture the bishop, which is another way to deal with an attack on the f pawn, is to capture the pieces that are actually threatening that square. So here we go. And in this situation, there really is no more hope for black to attack this pawn because they have lost their bishop. So this is an excellent game example to teach you about overprotecting the f-pawn to keep it safe. Now let's look at this one. This is where you trade pieces so that they can't attack the f-pawn. We saw a little bit of that in our overprotect example, but let's see a more deliberate example. So here we are. White has chosen the 4-move checkmate as a threat, and black plays one of my favorite moves in chess, this knight move here. Not only does it attack the queen and the bishop, it also defends against the 4-move checkmate. So that's a really, that's a really cool knight move. So the queen has to run away because you don't want to lose your queen, and then we take the bishop and they take back. And so what we have done is there is one attacker of the f-pawn and one defender, so we don't need to really do anything else as black. And now you can see the queen is attacking the c-pawn, so we have to defend that like this. So you can see white is trying to make their attacks happen again. They want to bring this knight out and attack the f-pawn a second time. So you see the e5 move uses the queen to attack the square. So if the knight did move there, we would just take it. So he can't do that. So he moves this d-pawn, allowing the bishop to defend the knight move. And so the double queen-bishop battery attacks this g5 square, once again preventing the knight from going there because we would just take it. And then we would go here, and now we're threatening this check, which could win the rook if white is not careful. So you can't let that happen. So now they play h4 as another defender of g5, so this knight can come in and threaten the square, which is not a big deal because now we just take it. And once we take it, it can't attack the f7 square anymore. They do recapture attacking the queen, and then the queen moves to c7, defending f7, just in case. So this was an excellent example of how trading pieces can lessen the attack on your f-pawn. Let's look at blocking. Blocking is another example. So here we go. Blocking is when you get in the way. See, right here, the bishop attacks f7, and then this pawn gets in the way, so now the bishop can't see f7. All it can see is this pawn on d5. Well, no problem. White says, well, then I'll remove your pawn. And then you remove the pawn back, and you're still attacking this bishop, and that bishop cannot see f7 because the d5 pawn is in the way. So it has to run away to safety like this. So blocking is a very effective method. There are many, many examples of how blocking could go, but I think this one is sufficient. Let's look at castling queenside. So in this game, we're going to see white castle their king on the queen side and not worry about defending the f-pawn because the king isn't going to be next to it. So here we go, a simple game here. You can see we just moved the f-pawn, and yes, that does weaken these two diagonals. That is true. However, there's a bishop on this diagonal, which is important. The bishop can also drop back to this diagonal and attack there. And black does not really have any pieces able to take advantage of either diagonal. So moving this f-pawn allows the pawn to defend e4, which is important. So here we go. As you can see, we castle, and those two weak diagonals don't really matter as long as the king isn't on g1 or e1. The king went to c1, and so those weak diagonals don't matter anymore. Okay. Now here's a little tougher strategy. So I made a very simple example. You can defend your f-pawn by attacking squares that their pieces want to move to where they could attack the f-pawn. So for example, if this queen wanted to move here to attack the f-pawn, if you were to attack that square, then the queen could not move there without risking being captured. So, but let's look at this example. Very simple example. Actually, that was part of it. So d4 on move 1, before black gets any moves, we have stopped bishop c5 from being able to attack f2, because if the bishop moved to c5, our pawn could just take it. So here we go. You'll see our knight did another job. Basically, if the queen wants to come out and attack the pawn, the knight is attacking that square. So if the queen were to actually move there, then we would take the queen, and that would be it. The other option is, what if the queen wanted to move here to attack the f-pawn? Well, she could, but we are now using the blocking strategy. The queen cannot see the f2 square because the knight stands in the way. Which brings us to our final method. You can combine methods to defend the f-pawn. So let's look at how that would work. So right here, straight off the bat, we are stopping black's bishop from getting to c5, where it would see our f-pawn. So that's the first example. Here we have the knight attacking this square, which prevents the queen from coming in. Let's see here. Oh yeah, so this is a good one. So this pawn move here, if the bishop were ever to move here, it would not see the f-pawn because this pawn would be in the way. So for example, if c5 happened, bishop, and then we took there, while the bishop is on c5 trying to target f2, the e3 pawn blocks it and says that you can't. Okay, so here we go. See if we can find a new... Okay, yeah, castling. So we have doubled up our defense on that square by defending it or overprotecting it. Castling always overprotects the f-pawn, which is a really great feature of castling. So here we go. Let's see if we can find any more. We have more overprotection. The bishop retreats back, defending it. And at this point, any trained chess player could look at black's position and understand black has no chance to attack this f-pawn. They don't have a bishop that can target it. They don't have a queen that can target it. Moving the knight in by itself does target it, but it doesn't do anything on its own. So the f-pawn is not really white's concern right now, but in this particular game, we do see a lot of f-pawn defense. So all those trades lessen the attack on the f-pawn square, and you'll notice that because black castled queenside, and they gave away their pawn like all the way back here. So right here when they played c5, you'll notice that that's kind of like black's f-pawn when you castle is the c-pawn. So what happens is when they trade that pawn off, and then we go into the future and look at all the pawn trades and everything, or all the piece trades, you can see this king looks very vulnerable. And it's very similar to the idea of uh, when the F pawn goes away, your king becomes weakened. So in this case, because because black castled queenside, the C pawn was kind of like the F pawn. So with it being gone, you can see how dangerous it gets. So the game concludes like this. Shouldn't be too surprising to anyone. Basically, you'll notice this bishop came out here. It does target F2 if E3 ever moves to E4 or gets captured somehow. So you can see that black has still got a little bit of hope to maybe try to attack this at some point, but practically speaking, there's just no way that's going to happen. All right, I hope that this was a great example of how to defend yourself and defend your F-pawn from attacks. And I hope that it deepens your understanding of the four-move checkmate and king safety a little bit, because those are very important themes when you're learning how to play chess better. Okay. It was a great lesson, everyone. I hope you all listen to your coaches and listen to your parents and do your homework and do a great job in school. I definitely want to make sure that every chess cadet, or I should say chess space cadets, are always doing their best, no matter what. So, this is Commander Ryan signing off, and I will talk to each of you another day.